Hello, I'm Antoinette James, reporter in Hei-Wakaputanga jurisdiction. Welcome to Behind the Beehive, where I look behind the corporation jurisdiction's political show and try and reveal the truth. And the truth I'm wanting to reveal today is that the elites, as we know, the 1% of the 1% are herding us to the gulag, and they're doing it by a myriad of Marxist players, useful idiots as the elites call them, that are walking slowly through our institutions, just like Mao Zedong, a slow march through the institutions, grabbing our institutions as change agents, and changing the fabric of New Zealand, the culture of New Zealand, the spirituality of New Zealand to mirror a globalist elite's Luciferian culture and spirituality. And today I'm wanting to untangle and unpack well, for me it's kind of a new player on the block, but actually they've been here for a few years, very much seated in pantheistic deceit, you know, that one world religion that the one world government, the UN, is slowly bringing in. And to start it off this morning, I just want to step back to the 1990s when Bill Clinton was President of the United States. And he gave a very tell-all speech to the United Nations in September 1997. And I just want to read this to you just to set the scene for today's talk, because it is very revealing. Quote, "The forces of global integration are a great tide inexorably wearing away establishment order of things. People are susceptible to misguidance, protectionism, to the poisoned appeals of extreme nationalism and ethnic, racial, and religious hatred." Whoa! Did not know that, but there it is. Let's just set the scene. Let's just make sure we all understand that we're nasty individuals, and thankfully we have the elites to look after us. Clinton goes on. "The new global environment challenges require us," that's the leaders, the movers and shakers, the elite, the 1% of the 1%, the Luciferians, "to find a new strategy of security." That's for them. They need to be secured and kept in that kind of bubble away from we plebs. But also you'll notice a lot of rhetoric coming out these days is about security, food security, climate security. You know, it's all about security. So we've got to be very thankful that they're looking after us. We will see. He goes on, "Nations have begun to put that strategy in place." Oh, back in the 1990s, already begun to put strategy in place through a new network of institutions and arrangements. Whoa, arrangements. Whoa. Lockdown centres for dissenters, that sounds like a new arrangement. Oh, the poison needle, that would be another new arrangement. It's very scary talk. All, all in code, so it goes over our heads. I'll just finish his quote here. He goes on. "Nations are now settling into international ground rules." Not the rule of law anymore. It's a rules-based order. "Ground rules for the 21st century, isolating those who challenge them from the outside." Wow. Okay. So when they say nations, I hate this kind of vocabulary. Society. I don't know where society is. It's hiding out somewhere. Nations. We're talking leaders, Marxist, evil leaders. And anyone that challenges them, we the people, then we're going to be isolated. So they've got all sorts of ways of doing that. You know, hate speech, we'll shut that down. Online security. Oh, there's all sorts of ways that we will get isolated. So he made that very clear over 20 years ago. So today I want to introduce to you, and you may already have heard of them, I hadn't, and that's WEgo. And I was listening recently to UK Column News, and they introduced WEgo to me, and I thought, oh, let's have a look at this, and thus I'm sharing it with you today. They always have these acronyms, and they're all very sneaky, and they always tend to say something like, we're on the move here. It's kind of subliminal, isn't it? But it stands for Well-Being Economy Governments. Well-being economy governments. It's got nothing to do with democracy, nothing to do with what we the people want. No, we've got this under control and you just go away, or we'll deal with you by isolating you. So that's WEgo. And we will learn where it stems from, who is part of that, and a little bit of what it's looking like for us globally, but obviously for us in New Zealand. It's going to look different in each country. And the few countries that are already kind of members of that, it's going to look different for them so that it doesn't look like we're globalized, because we're not supposed to know that. We're still supposed to think that we're a sovereign and independent nation until the trap suddenly gets pulled. So this seems to be a part of the IUCN, the International Union for the Conservation of Nature. And they've been around since forever, really, since the 1940s, getting ready for the UN Earth Summits. And then we know the 1992 one when Agenda 21 came out and our government started to sign into that. It wasn't binding. That came in 2015 when John Key in New Zealand signed us off as a binding document. Anyway. So it's an IUCN initiative. And when you look into IUCN, you hear them say, quote, there are eco-spiritual organizations with eco-spiritual practices and principles, because we know we're in a spiritual war right now. We know that this is a one world government with a one world religion stuck to its hip. The original reason for the United Nations wasn't to bring peace to the world, it was to bring in a one world religion. And it's just part of their nefarious nature of keeping that down so they can covertly have their way with each individual country as they globalize us all. And so these eco-spiritual practices and principles are clearly pantheism. And pantheism is the core of Mithraism. And the United Nations is really the new shopfront of the Vatican. And the Vatican, or the papacy, is ancient mystery religion. It is Mithraism. They just have a very thin Christian veil over that. So it looks Christian. And for all intents and purposes, to the average Catholic who loves the Lord and believes that they're saved by his sacrifice on the cross and by his grace and his mercy, totally true. We're not talking about the individual. We're talking about the institution. We're talking about the Vatican papal organization that is Mithraism. So they are bringing in effectively this one world religion through the United Nations, and this one world religion is sun worship, ancient mystery religion. So remember, the United Nations is in its decade of biodiversity restoration, or ecosystems restoration. The UN always seems to have, the UN Day for this, and the UN Week for this, and the UN Month for that, but they also have decades. And we're right, I don't know, about year 3 into that now. Now, you've got to understand that it's restoration. This isn't renovation. When we renovate a house, and maybe an old house that was built 100, 200 years ago, we renovate it for 21st living. So we live the way we like to live these days, more open plan, indoor-outdoor flow, those sorts of things. No, we're not talking renovation, we're talking restoration. So that means as it was at the very beginning. So if we were going to restore a house, we would just do it as it was in the beginning. And if we couldn't get the resources, we would have them made for us, crafted for us, as it were. We'd give the templates. This is what these tiles would have been back in the day. This is what the wallpaper would have looked like back in the day. That is restoration. So when we're looking at the globe or our ecosystems or our biodiversity restoration, the United Nations is meaning pre-human. And a lot of New Zealand documentation talks about pre-human. And, that also means, by the way, pre-human, pre-European coming to New Zealand, pre-Maori coming to New Zealand, and those other people groups that were here in New Zealand before Maori. Pre-everyone. Just move them out. Deal with them. And this is bringing most countries of the world back to a pre-human state. And that's why we have initiatives in wilding and retreat initiatives going on. It's ways of herding people out of rural areas and into the city. Another example is the resource management hoops that farmers have got to jump through, and the taxation, and all the permits and licenses that farmers need to get just to do the normal process of farming, and the co-ops they now need to be part of. Fonterra, for example, we need to get our farmers out of all these things and get back to being their independent self, or maybe having a local co-op. None of the centralization, it's all globalization. So we live in this ever tangled and growing web of organizations that our taxes pay, and groups and international alliances to destroy our thought and to dispel any pushback, because it becomes, quite frankly, very overwhelming. But pushback we must. Let's have a look at WEgo's overview. Quote, making the transition to a well-being economy. Whoa. So we're not talking about financial economy now. This is completely different. This is the new world order. Finances go to one side, because we're going to finish with that anyway as soon as we can, say the elite, and we'll be credit-based. So we don't need finances anymore. We got the slaves, they'll do the job. So we need a new economy, a well-being economy. Making the transition to a well-being economy is a top priority for the Scottish government. Yes, we're starting here in Scotland with this WEgo. This means building an economy that operates within safe environmental limits and which serves the collective well-being of current and future generations first and foremost. Collective. So, we'll abort those ones we don't want and euthanize the elderly, because after all, it's got to be a collective well-being. It's a bit like society, isn't it? I wish society would come in and introduce him or herself to me. I have no idea. Our economic transformation aims to fundamentally reshape our economy, delivering a just transition to net zero. Okay, pantheism, right, pre-human, getting it now, starting to join the dots. Uncle Bill talked about that at his TED talk, didn't he? Net zero, nature positive economy based on the principles of equality, prosperity, and resilience. I don't know who, it's not us, because we're gone in that net zero equation there. So that's code for looking after the ecosystem with the few slaves that are, 500 mil that they want just to keep this planet going. So they've got someone to iron the sheets and make the beds. Well, this reminds me of the United Nations One Health, and we have One Health New Zealand. You can Google that. It's all about zoonotics, I think it's called. And it's putting the ecology, animals, and human beings in one basket and dealing with them. So we want the health of all three. So we have to chuck out a few humans and say, actually, no, we'll pour a little bit of infertility agent into the water for the next 3 years for this zoonotic health. So be it. Right. So that's what it's all about. let's hear what the Scottish government say further. Scotland is a founding member of Wellbeing Economy Governance Group, an initiative where member countries are working together to understand the key priorities for a well-being economy. The group enables cross-government engagement, learning and collaboration to utilise the advice of experts. Oh, here we go. And deepen their understanding of delivering a well-being economy for citizens and the environment. Citizens, that's slaves, that's code for slaves, because we're not citizens. We're only citizens of a corporation government. We're nationals of our nation. So citizens, again, you know, citizens, it means nothing. Gibbly-gook to tie us down. So this is all about nature resilience, because it's pantheistic view, isn't it? It's this well-being, this bringing together of it. It's got nothing to do with the quality of living for we the people. And the quality of living in the West, because its philosophical seat is Protestant Christianity, has flourished. You look around the other economies around the world, to the East, to the African, to the Asian economies and way of living. And in fact, some of these peoples live the same way they lived a millennia, 2 millennia, 3 millennia ago. The West's economy quality of living is amazing because it's had this free market sitting on Protestant Christianity, virtues, not values, they change with whatever, virtues. That's what made the West so prosperous. Marxist Scotland, and they're a Marxist government. There's major problems in Scotland for freedoms for the people there. Do you know, just instinct, I can't prove it, but I've got a funny feeling that Comrade was really heading the march towards Agenda 2030 with all these pantheistic agendas and well-being agendas. You know, this is something a little bit more recent. I think they're just sharing the goodwill and giving it to Scotland to just deflect a little bit. They know that we're hot on the Wellington's nefarious dealings. We the people are hot on their trail, and maybe just throw it offshore just so it doesn't look like, again, we're leading, but we have been. One more quote before I kind of tie that into New Zealand a little bit more for us. Again, from WEgo, Scotland. The group was formally launched at the OECD's World Forum in South Korea in 2018. This included participation of senior officials from governments of Scotland, Iceland, and New Zealand, along with Professor Joseph Stiglitz, a member of the former Council of Economic Advisors and chair to the OECD's high-level group on the measurement of economic performance and social progress. And I hear he also was an advisor to the Scottish Government. So Organisation for Economic Cooperation and Development, that's what OECD stands for, another web to tie us all up. So that's what they're about there. Membership of the group has grown organically. Okay, whatever you say. Since its launch in 2018. Now, admittedly, Ardern's voluntary national review to the United Nations was 2019, but don't tell me that voluntary national review was pulled out of the air in 1 year. It was well underway. She probably tidied it all up at their 2018-2019 meeting. And I've got to say, other countries around the world have a voluntary national review as well. It's voluntary, don't you know, but no, we're going to spend millions getting it out there for you. And just to finish off this quote, since its launch in 2018, and currently involves the governments of Scotland, Iceland, New Zealand, Wales and Finland, with Canada actively participating. And I believe Australia is about to jump on. So all the Marxist governments that are spearheading us to the gulag and made sure that we were locked down and near destroyed during the scamdemic, they're all involved. In fact, talking about Australia, they've just, in July this year, 2023, they've put out their first wellbeing framework. Is about to measure what matters to the elite, which is, a well-being economy. So Australia's a little bit behind the eight ball, and it reminds me, yay, New Zealand, except not in this case. We were first with the pavlova, weren't we? But Australia likes to pretend they are. But we were first to have this well-being agenda marched across the country. I'm going to leave it there today. Thank you very much for joining me. You have a great day. Bless you now.